Okay, so we are going to start our meeting, and we welcome once again Commissioner Sinkevičius. When I say once again, it's not negative, of course, because we have a lot of text still under negotiation, and there are 4 more. The Soil Monitoring Law, the Waste Framework Directive, the Mercury Regulation, and circularity requirements for vehicle design. So we expect you to make a presentation of these 4 additional texts, and of course the scope for questions might be broader. So the floor is yours, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you very much, and good afternoon, dear Chair, dear Pascal, dear honourable members. It is always my privilege, honor, and pleasure, of course, to come to this committee and present to you our latest initiatives, but also answers questions that you have. I hope you all well rested after the summer, because there is still quite a chunk, I would say, of work ahead of us. Extremely important legislation to get through the co-decision process, and I think we absolutely can get there. We can maintain the 2019 momentum of the European Green Deal and ensure that we have a solid mandate where we truly deliver a change. Of course, we will need to work together constructively in a pragmatic way, and I think we can keep our objectives in our sights. I would like to use this session to present to you the latest proposals adopted by the Commission just before the summer break, and to answer questions that you have. The more things we can clear up in these early stages, then I think the more easier they can passage to the final negotiation. So I'll start with the proposal for a soil monitoring law adopted on the 5th of July. And like everything today that I present, it's a major deliverable that we promised under the European Green Deal. It reflects our commitments to ensure the sustainable use of EU's natural resources. It's also a proposal that looks outwards, spearheading global standards and easing the implementation of several SDGs and global biodiversity framework. And as you know, we need healthy soils for our climate, biodiversity objectives, and they also increase resilience to droughts and natural disasters. They protect human health, and they safeguard food security. With up to 70% of European soils in a poor state, there is an urgent need to act. Unhealthy soils are costing our economy more than €50 billion every year, and these costs continue to rise. And of course, the first ones to suffer or to feel those costs are the people who day to day work their land, work their soil. So it's our farmers, foresters. And that's why we proposed a new law. The idea is to give these ecosystems similar legal protection as to water, air, and nature. You asked for this law, and we have delivered. We have put a lot of effort into it to reflect the latest science, the feedback from you and all relevant stakeholders. And the proposal was conceived to minimize the administrative burden as much as possible, while of course building a common knowledge base that will allow an accurate diagnosis of the state of soils and to take action to heal unhealthy soils. It's balanced text, very carefully crafted. First, sufficient time is given to set up the governance system, the monitor and assess soils' health, and start implementing measures. Then the second phase will kick in after an evidence-based evaluation of the directive. But let me highlight 3 main elements of this proposal. The first is the monitoring and assessment framework. Based on the first ever EU legal definition of healthy soil and harmonized methodologies, this would allow the creation of a common knowledge base, which will bring together data from national, private, and EU sources, including Copernicus. Better data will bring many advantages. It will enable targeted measures for soil management and regeneration. It will also mean higher yields and lower inputs of water and fertilizers on agricultural soils. Secondly, The law proposes sustainable management principles for farmers and foresters, together with a soil health certification scheme. And those will help them improve the health of their soils and at the same time to increase the value of their land and of what is produced of it. This also opens the way to additional income opportunities for farmers and land managers through payments for ecosystem services and carbon removal certification. Farmers will be able to receive independent advisory to improve the state of their soil, certify it, and then ensure that they are financially rewarded for good soil management. Farmers will also have more access to innovation funding and training via the Horizon Europe's mission, A Soil Deal for Europe. So the third element is soil contamination. Europe today has some 3 million potentially contaminated sites with serious impacts, first of all on human health, especially for vulnerable population like children and elderly. These sites will need to be identified and investigated. And if contamination is found, the risk must be assessed and addressed. And this process needs to be transparent with data publicly available in a national register. In view of the strategic importance of the objective that this law aims to reach, the proposal also envisages the Union funding to support its implementation. And I'm convinced that the result is very balanced, enabling decisive steps at minimal cost, and there is full respect for subsidiarity principle, allowing member states to select and adapt measures that are best suited to local conditions. The second initiative I would like to present is the recast of the Waste Framework Directive, and more specifically the elements related to the textiles. And I'm sure you recall the Commission presented the food waste aspects in the committee in July. When it comes to textile waste, what we propose are practical steps towards more sustainable management. We can get that by improving separate collection, stepping up waste prevention, and promoting circularity in product design. I know you understand the need for new measures. We need to do a far better job managing textile waste. We are talking about 12.6 million tons every year, of which only 1/5 is collected separately for reuse or recycling. So 80% of these secondary materials and their value are currently being lost to the economy. Citizens are well aware of the negative impacts, both here and around the globe. With this proposal, we aim to turn these problems into business opportunities. So what we propose is a new regime where producers become responsible for the entire life cycle of the textiles that they produce. There will be two main effects. In the short term, it will raise funds to invest in separate collection, sorting, reuse, and recycling. And in the longer term, it will increase the circularity of textile manufacturing with more recyclability designed into textiles at the outset and more high-quality recycling when those textiles reach their end life. To make it work, we propose to use eco-modulation of fees, which means that the financial contribution that we ask of producers will depend on the circularity and environmental performance of their products. So they have an obvious incentive to make their products more durable and easier to recycle. We are sending a clear signal to the textile producers and the textile waste management sector, a clear indication of the direction they should take for research and development, for production and processing facilities. The proposal also clarifies exactly what constitutes waste and what we mean by reusable textiles. So that will help reduce illegal shipments of waste, which are often discussed as textiles for reuse. So, summing up, its proposal that decreases the environmental footprint of textiles while promoting the EU's economic resilience and competitiveness in the long term. The third initiative I want to present is also related to circularity, and this is new regulation on end-of-life vehicles. The automotive sector is hugely important for Europe, and it's undergoing a massive transformation. With the switch to electric mobility, the sector is highly resource intensive, with new vehicles needing massive quantities of steel, aluminium, and precious metals. To safeguard the future of the sector and enhance its competitiveness, we need more circularity. And that's why the Green Deal mandated the Commission to revise the rules on the end-of-life vehicles. The first pillar of the proposal is the design and production of new cars, and the goal is to increase the proportion of recycled materials in new vehicles and ensuring that these vehicles are easier to dismantle when they reach their end of life. Today, the quality of the scrap from vehicles is generally low. Many of these vehicles are exported outside the EU with the resources lost to the EU industry. So we propose specific measures to raise the quality of metal scrap and increase rates of plastics recycling. We also foresee tailored measures for the recovery of critical raw materials, and we aim to support the markets for used spare parts, which have lower environmental footprint than new ones and are cheaper for consumers. There are also provisions to avoid the export of non-roadworthy used vehicles. Today, some 800,000 used cars are shipped out of the EU every year. Many of them would fail in the basic EU requirements for roadworthiness. And I'm sure we all can agree that if a car isn't fit for EU roads, it isn't fit for any other roads. So it should not be authorized for export. Lastly, the proposal extends the scope to cover a wider range of vehicles. So we propose a phased-in approach with the basic rules on a waste collection and extended producer responsibility gradually being extended to trucks, buses, and motorcycles as well. So to a large extent, what we are using here is the same logic we used in the regulation on batteries. So I very much hope this proposal enjoys similar support. It too is firmly focused on the longer term. It's a determined effort to help the sector prepare for the major challenges ahead. Mercury regulation. Lastly, a very brief word now about the proposal to revive the mercury regulation adopted mid of July. Mercury is highly toxic, a major risk to human health. In adults, it can induce permanent damage to the brain and the kidneys, and it can have severe effects on fetal and early childhood development. So the progressive EU phase-out of intentionally added mercury has been underway for several decades. Now we target the few remaining intentional uses in line with Zero Pollution Action Plan and the EU chemical strategy with a view to becoming the world's first mercury-free economy. There are three main standards. The first is a total phase-out of the use of dental amalgam from 1st of January 2025, as there are now viable alternatives on our market. Exceptions will be still possible if they are deemed strictly necessary in line with specific medical needs. The second, also from 1st of January 2025, is a prohibition of manufacturing and export of dental amalgam. And the third is prohibition on the manufacturing and exports of various types of lamps that contain mercury between 2026 and 2028. So the proposal is targeted, but is still a very important step forward towards our zero pollution ambition, and also a sign that EU keeps leading internationally, also within the framework of the Minamata Convention. Honourable members, those are the main issues that I wanted to present. But I would like to finish on a more general point. We are in the final rush of our mandate, which has been marked by remarkable ambition to accelerate the green transition. And I'm convinced that this ambition, which was and has been driving the flotilla of the Green Deal initiatives, would soon translate in good, tangible results on the ground. Results like actually making good on biodiversity, slowing the pace of climate change, securing a more sustainable economy. So I very much look forward to beginning discussions on these proposals and to our collaborations in the months to come. Many files are already on the table, and we have to do all we can to advance them. And I'm thinking of nature restoration law, packaging waste, and waste shipments. I'm thinking also of eco-design and green claims that I'm sure that citizens really like and are waiting for the final outcome. Any number of zero pollution files, Industrial Emissions Directive, urban wastewater treatment, waste pollutants, air quality, and CLP. For some of these files, negotiations are already ongoing, and of course I'm confident that an agreement is within the reach. For the others, we should spare no efforts to ensure that trilogues can start as soon as possible, so that an arrangement can be reached before the next spring. Together with my services, I'm ready to fully support you in any way possible and to facilitate the co-legislators to take decisions. We need maximum of results on pending files before the end of this political terms, because we will be judged not by our words, but at the end of the day, about the results that we've managed to achieve. So I hope that we will use the best of our time and let's deliver on the European Green Deal. And as we agreed during my hearings, let's make the greenest mandate that Europe has ever seen. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to refer to the 16 trilogues we are now in, and plus the 21 negotiations we are in at the committee level. So it's massive, but we will deliver. Yep. So we move to the first round with the coordinators or their representative, then back to you, and then, as usual, catch the eye. So if you want to have your name, please signal it to the Secretariat. We start with Jessica Paul-Fjard for the EPP.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here. Welcome back to the committee after the summer break. Today we have a number of important proposals to discuss, presented by the Commission as the Waste Directive and End-of-Life Vehicles. But I would like to start where you also started, by the mentioning and emphasizing the soil monitoring law. Since it is its first ever EU legislation of its kind. The EPP supports the Commission's aim to achieve healthy EU soils by 2050, in line with the EU zero pollution ambition, and shares the ambition to strengthen the ecosystem services that healthy soils provide. But we are also aware of the wide range of differences between member states and areas across the Union, as well as the number of existing policy frameworks that already touch on soils, for example, the Common Agriculture Policy. And I would therefore ask the Commissioner, how can the Commission ensure that the new proposal will create synergies rather than overlaps with frameworks such as the CAP, LULUCF, and the Habitat Directive? And also, I would like to consider a maybe different question, but the impact on member states' national defense capacities. Will it have such an impact? And if so, has it considered exemptions for soil under the management of military and civil defense? Thank you.
Thank you. We move to SND and Timo Volken.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Dear Commissioner, thank you very much for being here today. And first, I would like to say on behalf of my group that we are glad that the Commission continues to take action on the files addressed in July. So we fully support your commitment to the Green Deal, and we are happy to work with you on these files. So first, I'm very happy that you finally published an action on mercury, which is not only an environmental pollutant, but also highly damaging to public health. So but I do have some questions on other initiatives. First, on the soil health law. Even though by the Commission's own assessment, 60 to 70% of the soils in the European Union are in a bad state, and contrary to the announcement in the soil strategy, the Commission is only suggesting common soil health categories and monitoring frameworks, instead of actually suggesting soil health targets that member states would be bound by. I don't doubt your assessment of soil health, but if it is so critical, what are you actually going to do about it? And beyond the existing initiatives and eco-schemes in the Common Agricultural Policy, how does the Commission plan to incentivize soil health measures, especially for small-scale farmers and land managers? Another question on the revision of the Waste Framework Directive. Collectively, the EU has signed up to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which foresees a reduction of food waste by 50% by 2030. Yet your proposal is proposing to aim for only a reduction of 30%. So are we openly giving up on the SDGs now? Furthermore, you are only placing a sectoral target of 10% waste reduction on the processing and manufacturing of foodstuffs. Consumers and farmers will have to make up the difference. Why exactly are we expecting much more from them than we are asking from the fruit industry giants? And one last question. The July package was also meant to contain a proposal for a forest monitoring law, which was already delayed from the first quarter of 2023. And you said you're committed to continue the work. We are as well. When can we expect this vital piece of legislation as the final stone in our work? Thank you very much.
Thank you. We move to Renew in Istorvas.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner, for being here with us and enjoying our merry company. First, a question about are we expecting some more legislation? Because there have been rumors of the REACH and microplastics and so on. So even if we know that the pipeline is pretty filled, and I just met the new Minister for Environment in Finland, and he said that the authorities are sort of up to their necks in trying to implement legislation. Which brings me to the next question. We have a lot of information about the waste legislation and possibilities or the ability of member states to implement the legislation is apparently lacking. What is the Commission planning to do about this? Because we think that if the Commission doesn't push the member state in implementing the waste legislation, then we might be on a slippery slope. So that would be nice to hear what you have to say. Then about the end-of-life vehicles, I fully understand and actually support your line here, but at the same time I have to say that you have a lot of SMEs in the long-haul lorry traffic where they have had a business idea, where they sort of buy a new car, a new lorry, and then they sell the older lorry to a competing market which is outside Europe. Your legislation, even if it's very good, is actually going to make transportation for these SMEs more expensive. So I hope you take that into account. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to the Greens. Manuela Ripa.
Thank you. I will speak in German, dear Commissioner. Lieber Herr.
Dear Commissioner, I would like to talk about the soil monitoring law. As you know very well, here in the European Parliament, we have been fighting for a European soil protection law, and my colleagues and I have presented a resolution. We know it's very important to you as well, as you yourself have just pointed out, and as you've also said in plenary session. But and yet, instead of soil protection, what we have is actually some guidelines to soil monitoring. And when we talked about this in June, when the Commission talked about it, of course it's important to gather data. We agree with that. And yes, we already know in what a poor state our soils are. 60 to 70% are unhealthy. And we know how important healthy soil is for our survival as well. Therefore, my question, Mr. Commissioner, how are you going to reach the goal of by 2050 being able to have healthy soils if there is binding goal, no specific deadlines to be met in the meantime, and if the instruments, therefore, are actually missing? Why is the importance of soil diversity not dealt with the same seriousness, or why are measures about that not taken into account? We're also disappointed about the fact that there's no specific measures concerning how to impede the fact that we have these brown fields that need to be renewed before, so that green fields can be made out of them. And then we also have empty areas that cannot be used because of industrial use that has been made before. And when I talk about brownfield, I'm not talking only about areas that have been produced, but also just empty industrial sites. If we knew all of this, we would know about what actually needs to be changed before actually fruitful, fertile land could be created in those areas. That's why our last question, would you in the trilogue negotiations support us when we in the Parliament were to come with specific amendments to move towards effective soil protection as part of this directive? Thank you.
Thank you. We move to ECR, Mr. Tertsch. No? Okay. You want to have the floor? Okay, Anna Zajewska instead.
Bardzo dziękuję panie przewodniczący, dziękuję panu komisarzowi. To rzeczywiście bardzo...
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner. These are very ambitious ideas, especially that we must take into account that we'll only have 6 months to work, because starting in April, we will all start our election campaign. We will make an inventory of what we have achieved. So the first question, have you evaluated the possibility to finalize the outstanding issues? Will we be able to have the right information and reach adequate decisions? Some of the documents cover a number of different directives or regulations. So will it be possible to review these documents and see the synergies? Because at the beginning of this term, we decided that we would not multiply documents unnecessarily. And third, will it be possible to quantify everything? I will be responsible for the waste directive, and I can already see a lot of hypocrisy because, for example, on textiles, we make most textiles outside the EU, and we recycle most of the textiles outside the EU. Even social responsibility of the producer will lie outside the EU. So we must not only be ambitious and teach lessons, but also be responsible without diversifying waste across the world. So it will be paramount to listen to consumers.
I anticipate a lot of the KGI questions. For ID, Aurélia Beigneux.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Chairman Commissioner. It's 2023 and Europe has not yet allocated its full trust to nuclear energy, and this is causing a lot of problems for us. The European Commission has been influenced by lobbies and has taken an anti-scientific approach with no consideration for European citizens and the bills they have to pay. Nuclear energy is the least polluting in the world and would allow us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and produce enough electricity for a whole continent. The whole world has understood the importance of nuclear energy except for the European Union. Whilst our societies suffer from upheaval, economic upheaval, environmental upheaval, only nuclear energy could provide an answer to that. It is your choices which have forced the European Union citizens into this difficult situation. in the end, countries which produce low-cost energy through nuclear, like France, are being penalised. Nuclear energy should have been one of our key policy planks. It would have allowed us to further develop technology in the country and would be essential for us, because if we don't have cheap energy, then we will continue to be dependent on third countries. We should be investing in nuclear energy in Europe. The European Investment Bank could help the member states and finance this energy. Otherwise, we are going to end up like other countries which wanted to go 100% renewable and have ended up opening the coal-fired power stations again.
Anja Azekamp.
Ja, dank u wel, voorzitter. Welkom, commissaris. De bodem vormt samen met lucht.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. The soil monitoring law is important. Soils are at the very basis of our lives. They are a source of bacteria, animals, worms, and so on. And they underpin an ecosystem which is essential when it comes to growing plants and crops. Implementing this legislation will be important. Why then, in your proposal, is there nothing binding? Who is going to benefit from all of this if it's not a few multinationals who couldn't give a damn about the future of the planet? We're at a turning point at the moment. We've seen record temperatures in the Netherlands, and we can no longer turn a blind eye on the need to protect the climate. The Commission's recent communication leads me to wonder about a number of things. In that communication, you say that you're putting the final touches to the Green Pact. But what about the rest of that Green Pact? What about legislation on sustainable food? What about the REACH revision? You also promised us laws against food waste. Now, we're talking now about soil monitoring, but I'm also interested in what you were doing on animals as well. And what are we doing with the export of banned chemical products? We've heard a lot of promises, and I'd like to know when the legislation relating to those promises is due to be published. As European Commissioner responsible for biodiversity, you're also responsible for protecting little worms right through to what's at the top of the food chain. Are you going to continue to protect the wolves out there without also thinking about the whole of the food chain and the way that your responsibilities tie in with what Mrs. von der Leyen has said recently? Wolves have an important role to play in our ecosystems as well.
Yes, thank you very much for your questions. First of all, to begin with, as regards the compatibility with other legislation such as CAP, LULUCF, Habitats Directive and so on. So I can reassure you that there is no overlapping, because of course when we were doing the impact assessment, we included the other legislation and compatibility with it. So soil monitoring law comes basically and does a fulfilling role that the others of those legislations haven't delivered, because it has a very clear ultimate goal of reaching good status of soil by 2050 with phase-in principles, which is not found in the other legislation. But of course, they all make basically a chain which is extremely important, so fulfilling with each other. Now, on the defense capacities, I can reassure you that that's not going to be a case and an issue, because of course defense is a top priority, especially now seeing basically a war raging on European soil. Now, when it comes to food waste target, first of all, it's the 30% target is also coming out of the impact assessment, and Commission is bound to follow the impact assessment and what is realistic to be implemented. We could probably have gone for a bigger ambition, but then we could not base those numbers and could not defend them also being here in this House. I know that they fall short of the SDG. However, it's the reality which we still need to make steps. As always, there is a possibility, of course, of revisions, and if technological progress allows, or etc., the targets can be as well modified. So now, coming back to the soil monitoring and speaking about the main benefits of the proposal, first of all, the proposal will reduce the costs from soil degradation and of the decreased provision of ecosystem services caused by, which is conservatively estimated around 50 billion euros per year. And this is cost currently borne by those who, as I said, work the land day to day. Farmers, foresters, and other soil managers. Farmers will benefit from soil monitoring law because their livelihoods and future depend on long-term health of the soils on which crops are growing and livestock is grazing, and the increased uptake of sustainable management practices will maintain or improve soil fertility, productivity, and yields over the long term, and can reduce costs through the increased availability of ecosystem services. As regards the forest monitoring law, this is one of 4 possible deliverables, but of course we need to see if it's ready, and of course if the level of ambition is maintained. We clearly see that the pipeline, as I introduced myself and the chair later underlined, is really full. So it's, of course, on one hand a political decision. Do we put additional proposals, which most likely, unfortunately, we won't be able to finalize in this mandate, or we focus on those that are already there? Some of those delivered early in mandate have really high ambition, and I think it would be extremely beneficial to focus on them. And by this I mean basically every pillar of the mandate: biodiversity, which is key proposal, nature restoration law, zero pollution ambition, with the number of proposal, and even circular economy, which I know that this House likes very much, with ESPR, green claims, and etc. being still discussed. So this also comes straight into that: is there more to come? Because authorities up to the neck with the implementation. What honourable member Niels Torvalds asked. So I fully understand and relate that the workload is huge to authorities, also to this House, also to the Commission. But I think in 2019, when this House called, when people, Europeans, called for the Green Deal, this is what it meant, because we cannot imagine Green Deal being a sort of micro change of certain environmental policies. It has to be horizontal, otherwise it's not going to happen on the ground, and I'm sure you all realize that very well. That's why it's been so challenging, because it's been so wide, touching on so many spheres and so many portfolios. Now, on end-of-life vehicles, I don't think so those SMEs will be much affected, because what it's going to affect most is, of course, those that sell basically cars that cannot be sold or is not possible to authorize here in Europe, and they are sold to the other parts of the world. So yes, those will be the most affected. But the business model that you're talking, that after a few years the used car in Europe is sold elsewhere for some profit price, they won't be affected much. But also we have to realize that we are facing increasing challenge with the resource scarcity. And many of those resources, they leave European Union in one or the other way. Some as a waste, the other as still a product. And that's a big issue. I myself met with the many industries who did complain that. Industries from food and beverages to automotive or even metals. So, of course, I hope that with our circular economy proposals, we will be able to at least partially, with the waste shipments, by the way, which is also on the table, we will at least manage partially deal with that. As regards the returning back to the soils, so first of all, on trialogue, Commission will always play its role as an honest broker between the Parliament and the Council. And of course, if there is ambition, if ambition changes or increases, Commission will be supportive and will look for the ways to facilitate that, to implement that. But the overall objective of the proposed law is to have all soils in healthy condition by 2050. And to achieve this, the soil monitoring law puts in place a very solid and coherent monitoring framework and ensures sustainable management for all soils across the EU, supported by the Commission. And the proposal will enable Member States to make an assessment of the health of their all soils in their territory and to take appropriate measures. And this is which was also asked about those geographical conditions, about the differences among 27 member states. Member states will do their own assessment. And then sustainable soil management will become the norm in the EU because member states, they will have to define the practices which should be implemented by soil managers and which should be banned. As regards Ms. Zalewska, which also asked that there is a lot of proposals already delivered, I won't repeat myself. I will just say that I think we have a duty to finalize the Green Deal, the greenery of this mandate, with those proposals being on the table, most of them coming to the trilogues where Parliament is playing a crucial role. As regards the textiles and listening to stakeholders, I will try very, very quickly, even so that there is still nuclear. As regards the textiles and listening to stakeholders, each of the Commission proposal is done with a very careful impact assessment. Same goes with soil and others, listening to stakeholders across the table, those who are involved in the market, NGOs, scientists, and so on, and the proposals are usually very carefully crafted. I would love to go, but I don't have time to go to that nuclear question because there was so many lies and manipulations. So first of all, France was never penalized for nuclear, and secondly, it's economic logic that renewables is getting cheaper and nuclear unfortunately is not able to cope because projects are heavy and difficult. I hope you will be able to understand that. Sorry. And then to Ms. Hazekamp, as regards REACH and banned chemicals, so the work is ongoing, and I hope that we still, if the ambition is there, be able to propose it in this mandate. And as regards the wolf, I know this is a hot topic in town, so I have to say, as regards the wolf, Commission position didn't change, but we have to react that there is big inequalities as regards the wolf population in some parts of Europe. So, for example, if you take Germany, Lower Saxony is a different case from the whole of Germany. Same, you have certain regions in Austria, Italy, and so on. So we have to help member states to deal with the issue that they could have a basically clear way to do so, and we will do that within the current legislation, I'm sure.
Okay, so I hope your own pony is fine with Wolf. So now we move to the Catch the Eye. I have many questions, so please stick to 1 minute. First, second, just to inform you, we postponed the voting session from 10 minutes, so 9 to 9:10, but we cannot postpone it later, so we really have to stick to this new timing. So I will have to contribute to you sticking to your 1 minute, being very firm on this. Then we start with the EPP and Per Nieuwenhuis.
Thank you so much. I will be very brief. It's about the Waste Framework Directive, where I read that in the explanatory memorandum, you use the term so-called to describe fast fashion. I would like to ask you, do you think that it's needed to have a more clear definition of what fast fashion really is, and how, if so, would you like to approach that definition? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Second question from the EPP, Madame Mortler, rapporteur from the Mercury file.
Vielen Dank. Herr Kommissar, wir alle wissen.
Thank you very much. Of course, we know the negative effects that we have in terms of mercury on land and on human beings. But of course, we know that amalgam in dental fillings is still being used, and this is something which we can see Europe-wide. Question: on what basis, which data in terms of environmental pollution is important as concerns amalgam fillings, and what is being done to prevent this, and what about some sort of a uniform rule, one fits all, and why here, in terms of what's happening through the union and what the modalities are the specific health services being called upon?
Watch. Okay, it's
It's
okay.
enough. I mean, 1 minute is enough to ask one question, okay? So we move to S&D, César Luena.
Gracias, muy rápido. Thank you very much. I'll be brief, Commissioner. There don't seem to be any binding aspects to the proposal on soils. So it doesn't seem very ambitious. And why haven't you included objectives to restore biodiversity of the soils? That was supposed to be here, but it isn't here or in the law on restoration as well. And then we see that there are no specific mechanisms to identify who should pay. Obviously, those are the people who pollute who should pay.
We start with the Soil Health Rapporteur, Martin Ovsik.
Thank you very much. And really, it's great to finally have, after almost 3 years of effort, the soil health law on the table. And I will keep on calling it soil health law because I believe it should be more than monitoring. And it definitely should go deeper into the resilience, which is still hidden in the name. And given that the resolution of the European Parliament had the support of more than 80% of the distinguished MEPs, my report will be focusing on the original demands or asks from the Parliament. So I'm wondering, Commissioner, why do you think the resilience and the kind of the clear objective of having healthy soils across the European Union is missing from the proposal? Thank you.
Thank you. We move to Emma Wissner.
Tack så mycket. Jag är decentralist. Jag tycker att beslut ska fattas så nära människor som möjligt.
Thank you. I think that decisions should be taken as close to those that they affect as possible, so through national parliaments on a local political level. But there are some things which are genuinely local in nature. For example, soils. And here we are, we're talking about a law on soil health. How can the Commission take into account all of the different local aspects which are important when it comes to European soils? And how can that take into account the diversity of the different member states?
We move to Catherine Chabot for Renew.
Merci, Monsieur le
Thank you, Commissioner, for this exchange of views. I'm somewhat worried that I haven't heard anything more about microplastics. I mentioned it to you earlier in plenary. We talked about soil pollution, air pollution, water pollution, and all these texts we're going to vote on. And then we've also got the problem of synthetic fibres, which cause pollution too. Whilst the European Union is negotiating the International Treaty on Plastics, I think that it's essential that we get that text. So can you reassure us, will we get that by the end of the year? Thank you.
Paulsen for Renew.
Thank you. Another question about wolf and the protection of animals. I welcome that the Commission urged Member States to take action and provide data for a conservation status review. On the basis of the data collected, the Commission will decide on a proposal to modify the status of the protection of the wolves within the EU. Thus, that means that the Commission is open for a change of the strict protection under the Habitats Directive. You can just say yes or no. Thank you.
Thank you. Malte Gallet for the Greens. No, we move to Per Olgren for the Greens.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner. I want to ask you about the Waste Directive proposals and focus then on the textile dimension. As Greens, we've been pushing for harmonized extended producer responsibility schemes in the EU for a long time, but I would say that this proposal is still far too unclear and vague on the details. In particular, the EPR schemes, they could be a tool to tackle the huge volumes and overproduction we see today. But how will this proposal ensure that the fees are formed in a way to tackle that overproduction? And secondly, how do we ensure these fees also compensate for management costs in countries in the global south that, after all, receives more or less all of our exported used textiles? And it was also my understanding that a separate revision of this revision this year would include targets for textile waste prevention, collection, reuse and recycling. But when can we expect such targets?
Thank you very much. And we move to the last question, Madame Dempsey for non-attached.
Grazie Presidente, grazie
Well, thank you, Chairman. Thank you to the Commission as well. Support for all of the initiatives to safeguard the environment we think are important, and the objectives set out on soil monitoring don't really go far enough. We're still using up too much soil. I think that we're going to have to use some kind of extraordinary measure to make sure that hectares and hectares of soil which are being removed from the area around Milan to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now, when it comes to textiles, I agree with what you're doing, but it needs to be more effective in the delegated acts when it comes to labelling. Given that we are talking about producer responsibilities, I would ask you to take into account that the fact that if we want producers in Europe to respect our objectives, the labels have to set out where all of the different stages take place. Thank you.
Sure, the level playing field. Thank you very much for your discipline. 8 minutes, Commissioner.
Thank you. I'll do my best in this 8 minutes. So, first of all, on fast fashion. So, we don't have such accurate, let's say, description. But I think what we are aiming is, of course, to prolong the use and have recyclability, reusability, repairability, basically designed in fashion products, allowing them to survive longer cycles and then not end up on the shores of Africa or being burned, which is at the moment most of the cases. As regards the mercury, very shortly, so it's been progressively introduced depending on availability of course, and I'm talking here about the fillings, amalgam fillings. Basically, at the beginning, it was only children and pregnant women, which was banned. Now we are extending from 2025 January because there is an existing alternatives, and therefore, of course, the decision is taken with full phase out. As regards the soil monitoring law, basically the target is there. The target is to achieve the good health of our soils by 2050. And when it comes to the polluter pays principle, or who pays for contaminated sites, this is what we exactly foreseen, that after the assessment, if it's a contaminated site heavily, that those who are responsible has to pay for decontamination. And this is one of the, I would say, 3 major deliverables in that legislation. As regards the objective missing, I don't fully agree. I think objective is there. Could it be more specific, more detailed, and so on? Probably yes. But we should not forget and we should not ignore the reality. I mean, I do appreciate being here in this room with you and hearing this ambition and always a push towards more and more ambition. But the reality is that we are in a different phase of mandate, and it's very difficult to maintain that level of ambition which was there in 2019, but it's also in your hands. And really, your help and your support helped a lot to put those proposals on the table. So I hope that we will be able to do the same work to finalize them, but we should not forget what sort of votings we just have had, how difficult they were, and keep that in mind, because there is still so much to do in the pipeline. Ms. Wiesner asked about the local aspects, so that's exactly the phase-in principle which Commission introduced in the soil monitoring, that member states will do their assessment and propose the most effective measures to their region. So it's basically, it will come from the member states' information and data. It won't be top-down approach. Madame Chabot, as regards the microplastics, it's one of the 4 deliverables which is still pending, and again, depending on the level of ambition, depending on the time and possibilities, finalized or not, the final decision will be taken. I can reassure you that the proposal is more or less ready. As regards the wolf, it's not yes or no question. It's a question that we need more data. As I said, we see big differences, even within the same member states, as regards the wolves population. And of course, we need to react, especially as regards the farmers community that are heavily affected in some parts of Europe due to geographical difficulties. Sometimes they cannot fully use, all the tools. So by the end of 2023, Commission will finalize the data collection, and then we'll come with the next steps. As regards waste framework directive and the producer responsibility scheme being used in textiles, I think the approach is, first of all, on one hand, is to make sure that we have producer responsibility scheme as a first step introduced because it's been never there with the textiles industry. But secondly, we really want to transform textile industry, because I'm afraid that, we have in other parts extended producer responsibility schemes, and they're not fully delivering. Therefore, we put this conditionality so that it would serve as incentive for textiles industry to change. And I'm truly thankful to textiles industry who in Europe here, the ones, they were very positive about that. And the last but not least question on the labeling. So I think there is a lot of work actually on the labeling that is done that we need to finalize. Under the ESPR, first of all, we're going to have our famous QR codes where you're going to get the all information, basically sustainability information. Secondly, the green claims proposal. Product passport, yes. So that's what I meant. So with the product passport, you will get the whole information. And then with the green claims proposal, I think we're going very well after those fake claims or fake labels that there are still a lot of them in the EU, around half of them, basically banning them and leaving on the market only the reliable ones. So I think consumer will have, when we finalize the process, will have a very accurate information and will make sustainable choices easier. I have to stop here because I know you have a lot of work still to do. I was very happy to see you at least for 1 hour. As always, I am available if you have any questions. But as I said, there is still so much work to do ahead of us. I can only reassure that the Commission will put all the efforts to finalize those proposals that we have put forward and to truly make this mandate the greenest that Europe has ever seen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Commissioner, also for the timing. We make a very short 1-minute break and then we proceed to the vote.
Let's start.
So we are going to start. Please get to your seats. Thank you. Okay, so we will, of course, we will start with the test vote. So I wait still for 10 seconds and then we proceed to the test vote. Okay, let's proceed. So the vote is open. Okay, fine. Okay, and can you see the results on the screen? Yes. Okay, so I think everything is fine on your hand, and it's working again or not?
But she's trying over.
Okay, good. So we start on the first text regarding CLP. So compromise amendment 1. Who is in favor? Who is against? Abstention adopted. Amendments 131 and 132 have been withdrawn. So we move directly to 144. Who is in favor? Against, abstention adopted. We move to compromise 2, first alternative. Who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. Compromise 2, who is in favor? Against, abstention adopted. We move to
It's here, 190.
190, thank you. Who is in favor? Against, abstention adopted. 192, who is in favor? Against, abstention, let's check this one. 192. The vote is closed and it is adopted. So we move to compromise amendment 3. Who is in favor? Against, abstention adopted. We move to 200. Who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. We move to 206. Who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. We move to 201. Who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. 202. Who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. 203, who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. 212, who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. We move to 213, who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. We move to compromise amendment alternative 3, who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. Compromise amendment 3A. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention adopted. We move to compromise amendment 4. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention adopted. We move to 258. Thank you. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention rejected. 260, who is in favor? Against, abstention rejected. 259, thank you. Who is in favor? Against, abstention adopted. 264, 263, identical. Who is in favor? Against, abstention, let's check this one. The vote is closed, and it is adopted, 38 versus 34. We move to 268. Who's in favor? Against? Abstention? Let's check as well this one. 268. The vote is closed, and it is adopted. 270. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention? Adopted, same majority. We move to compromise amendment 5. Who's in favor? Against? Abstention? Adopted. Sorry?
307.
Yeah, 307. Thank you. You are so fast. So who is in favor? Against? Abstention? Rejected. 308. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention? Rejected. So we move to 324. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention? Rejected. Compromise amendment 6. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention? Adopted. 89. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention? Rejected. 101. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention? Rejected. 115. Who is in favor? Against? Abstention? Rejected.
113. 113.
Who say?
So we have 111 and then 115.
No, it's should I
115, yes.
Yeah.
No, they're saying 113. No, it's the next one.
No, it's not been adopted.
Yeah, so
we need to vote for.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Okay, so 114 because 115 has not been adopted. Okay, so 114. Who's in favor? Against? Abstention? Let's check this one. 114. The vote is closed, and it is adopted. 38 to 36. When we move to 125, who's in favor? Against? Abstention? Let's check this one. 125. The vote is closed, and it is adopted. Then we move to the final vote. It's a roll call vote. The vote is open. And the vote is closed. And it is widely adopted, 63 to 10. Congrats to the rapporteur and to the negotiating team. Now we move to the next vote, Union Civil Protection Mechanism. It's a roll call vote, so the vote is open. The vote is closed, and it is widely adopted. Bravo. Then we move to the next two votes on pollinators initiative. So first, the oral question to the Commission. It's an electronic vote. The vote is open. The vote is closed, and it is supported. Congrats. And we move to the second question to the Council. The vote is open. Shh, please, Mohammed. Do something. And the vote is closed. Please vote. Vote is closed, and it is widely supported. Thank you. The voting session is closed.